NDP ਆਗੂ ਜਗਮੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਨੇ ਪਾਰਲੀਮੈਂਟ ਹਿੱਲ ਤੇ ਪੱਤਰਕਾਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ। ਇਸ ਦੌਰਾਨ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸੰਸਦ ਦੇ ਅਗਲੇ ਸੈਸ਼ਨ ਲਈ ਆਪਣੀ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੀਆਂ ਤਰਜੀਹਾਂ ਬਾਰੇ ਵੀ ਚਰਚਾ ਕੀਤੀ। ਪੋਪ ਫਰਾਂਸਿਸ ਦੀ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਫੇਰੀ ਦੀ योजना बारे एक पत्रकार के सवाल के जवाब में सिंह ने कहा कि पोप नूं कैथोलिक चर्च द्वारा मूलवासी लोगों विरुद्ध कीतियां गलतियां लई माफ़ी मंगनी चाहिए है अते चर्च नूं मुआवजा भी देना चाहिए है।
Thanks for being here. Merci d'être ici. I want to chat about, first off, COP21 and some of our priorities. I'll be attending, and I want folks to know that you can count on New Democrats to fight to see real concrete action, that Canada is doing its part. And we're going to focus on three things in particular that we want to see from Justin Trudeau and from the Liberal government. First off, we want to see bolder ambitions to reduce emissions. We need to have higher targets. We campaigned on at least 50% reductions in emissions, and we want to see this Liberal government get as close as possible to 50%. They put out a target that's below 50%. We want to push them as high as possible. In the States, President Biden is doing 50%. That's their commitment. They're coming to COP with that commitment. We want to see Canada as close as possible to 50 or even higher. But 50 is what we're hoping for, and we're going to try to push the Liberals to be as high as possible. They've given a range of 40 to 45. We'd like to see them at the higher end of that. Certainly. Thanks for the question. First of all, we don't know what is exactly going to happen with the visit, but I want to make it clear that we expect that the Pope should apologize for the wrongs committed by the Catholic Church against Indigenous people, particularly in residential schools. So we expect an apology, but an apology is not good enough. The Catholic Church also is responsible for compensation and should provide that compensation to survivors of Indigenous residential schools. And finally, we also know there's many documents that the Catholic Church has still not provided to give closure to families so they can know what happened to their children. That's another element that we expect to see. And it's also important, it ties in very well to the deadline on Friday. The court case right now that the Liberal government's fighting, that Justin Trudeau is fighting, is effectively fighting the survivors, the children of these survivors of residential schools. So these kids are the survivors, children, and they're facing discrimination, and this Liberal government is fighting them in court. So it's an ongoing legacy, and they need to end the legacy. They need to stop fighting these kids in court and comply with the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal and deliver justice.
बैंक ऑफ कैनेडा के गवर्नर टिफ मैकलम ने ओटावा विच एक न्यूज़ कॉन्फ्रेंस विच हिस्सा लिया। इस दौरान उन्होंने केंद्रीय बैंक के नवीनतम ब्याज दर फैसले अते मुद्रा नीति रिपोर्ट बारे चर्चा की। उन्होंने दस्सिया कि फिलहाल केंद्रीय बैंक अपनी बेंचमार्क नीतिगत ब्याज दरां विच कोई बदलाव नहीं कर रहा। उन्होंने आख्या कि सालाना महंगाई दर विच वाधा सारा साल बढ़िया रहेगा।
This morning we announced that after more than a year and a half, we are ending quantitative easing. We undertook QE first to help restore market functioning and then to boost our monetary policy stimulus. Since last October, in line with progress in Canada's economic recovery, we have been gradually reducing the pace of our QE purchases. With the economy once again growing robustly, Governing Council judged that QE is no longer needed. This means we will stop growing our holdings of Government of Canada bonds. But let me remind you that the significant stimulus we have injected through QE remains in place. We're just not adding to it. We call this the reinvestment phase. In this phase, we will purchase bonds only to replace those that are maturing so that our overall holdings of Government of Canada bonds remain roughly stable over time. The end of QE comes as increasing vaccination rates are enabling continued progress in the economic recovery in Canada and around the world. While new complications of reopening continue to crop up, and they are boosting the prices of many globally traded goods, I'm struck by how much progress our economy has made since the start of the crisis. We've come a long way. And our forecast is for an increasingly healthy economy, even if these complications are going to be with us for a while longer. The combination of ongoing supply disruptions and related cost pressures, as well as higher energy prices, is putting upward pressure on many prices around the world. In Canada, inflation is currently running at about 4.5%. We now expect it to rise to close to 5% by the end of this year, before coming back down to around the 2% target by the end of next year. In other words, we continue to expect that inflation will ease back, but relative to our July forecast, it's higher for longer.
ਨਿਊ ਬਰਨਸਵੀਕ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰੀਮੀਅਰ ਬਲੇਨ ਹਿਕਸ ਨੇ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਯੂਨੀਅਨ ਆਫ ਪਬਲਿਕ ਇੰਪਲਾਇਜ਼ ਨਾਲ ਕੰਟਰੈਕਟ ਵਾਰਤਾ ਦੇ ਅੰਤ ਬਾਰੇ ਪੱਤਰਕਾਰਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ। ਪ੍ਰੀਮੀਅਰ ਨੇ ਯੂਨੀਅਨ ਵੱਲੋਂ 5 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਦੇ 2% ਦੇ ਠੇਕੇ ਦੀ ਪੇਸ਼ਕਸ਼ ਨੂੰ ਰੱਦ ਕਰਨ ਅਤੇ ਹਸਪਤਾਲਾਂ ਜਾਂ ਸਕੂਲਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰਭਾਵਿਤ ਕਰਨ ਤੋਂ ਹੜਤਾਲਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਰੋਕਣ ਲਈ ਬੈਕ ਟੂ ਵਰਕ ਕਾਨੂੰਨ ਲਾਗੂ ਕਰਨ ਬਾਰੇ ਚਰਚਾ ਕੀਤੀ।
With that in mind, yesterday, despite our medium-term economic outlook, we offered CUPE a wage increase of 2% per year for the next 5 years, 100% salary for casuals, sustainable pension plans for existing plans that are in jeopardy, and the opportunity for a pension plan for those who don't currently qualify for one. Instead, CUPE rejected this offer, asking for 3% a year for the next 4 years, and denied the offer for sustainable pension plans for the members, as well as full pay for casuals working full-time. I ask, is this reasonable? I refer to the comparison that CUPE has posted in relation to what our offer was last night. And I refer to the offer last night because that offer is now off the table. It was something to help us close the deal. It was something that was clearly rejected. And so now it's a new day. So what was offered last night, as I mentioned, we had a 2% for 5 years. CUPE came back with 3% for 4 years. We have many contracts that are already at their 4-year term, and so it would mean that we'd start negotiating again next week with some of the locals. I don't see any real advantage to be in that position. The $500 COVID one-time payment was never part of the CUPE offer. That was an offer that was given to the nurses, but it was not part of this CUPE offer.
ਰੈਜ਼ੀਡੈਂਸ਼ੀਅਲ ਸਕੂਲਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੈਥੋਲਿਕ ਚਰਚ ਦੀ ਭੂਮਿਕਾ ਲਈ ਮਾਫੀ ਮੰਗਣ ਦੀ ਉੱਠ ਰਹੀ ਮੰਗ ਦਰਮਿਆਨ ਪੋਪ ਫਰਾਂਸਿਸ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦਾ ਦੌਰਾ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਨ। ਇਸ ਦੌਰਾਨ ਮੂਲ ਵਾਸੀ ਆਗੂਆਂ ਦਾ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਸੁਲ੍ਹਾ ਦਾ ਅਸਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸਰ ਹੋਣ ਲਈ ਪੋਪ ਦਾ ਇਹ ਦੌਰਾ ਸਿਰਫ ਅੱਖਾਂ ਪੁੰਝਣ ਵਾਲੀ ਗੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ, ਸਗੋਂ ਮਾਫੀ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਮੁਆਵਜ਼ਾ ਵੀ ਮਿਲਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਹੈ। ਜ਼ਿਕਰਯੋਗ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਕਾਨਫਰੰਸ ਆਫ ਕੈਥੋਲਿਕ ਬਿਸ਼ਪਸ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਮੂਲ ਵਾਸੀ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਸੁਲ੍ਹਾ ਦੀ ਕਵਾਇਦ ਨੂੰ ਪੂਰਾ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਪੋਪ ਫਰਾਂਸਿਸ ਨੂੰ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਆਉਣ ਦਾ ਸੱਦਾ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਸੀ, ਜਿਸ ਲਈ ਪੋਪ ਨੇ ਹਾਮੀ ਭਰੀ ਹੈ।
The world was watching and putting a lot of pressure on the church to make reparations, whatever that may look like. The ones that wanted a true apology and actually made their first trip to the Vatican, they're no longer with us. And so the ones that really did want it are no longer here to witness it. And the ones that are here are beyond words, are beyond the apologies, are beyond saying enough, sprinkling on the right words to make things feel better, until you actually prove there are actionable items to what reconciliation can mean.
It'll make my job a lot easier in reconciliation. And for Indigenous people, I believe that what the Holy Father says, it gives them credence. Religious term. It gives them credence to believe, yes, these things did happen to Indigenous people of this land. And he's acknowledging that, and he will apologize for that, and then let's start the healing.
Truth and Reconciliation Commission had many survivors testify, and many of them wanted to hear this apology. I think it's really important to honor that wish, and I think it's important for their journey into healing after what the churches did to them.
It's something that probably a lot of First Nations across Canada there's a lot of mixed feelings.
ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਾਪਰੀ ਇੱਕ ਘਟਨਾ ਦੇ ਸਬੰਧ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੀਲ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਦੇ ਇੱਕ ਅਧਿਕਾਰੀ ਨੂੰ ਹਮਲੇ ਸੰਬੰਧੀ ਚਾਰਜਿਸ ਦਾ ਸਾਹਮਣਾ ਕਰਨਾ ਪੈ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ। ਪੀਲ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਇਸ ਸਬੰਧ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੋਈ ਖਾਸ ਵੇਰਵਾ ਮੁਹੱਈਆ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਵਾਇਆ ਗਿਆ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਘਟਨਾ ਕਦੋਂ ਵਾਪਰੀ, ਪਰ ਇਹ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਘਟਨਾ ਉਸ ਸਮੇਂ ਵਾਪਰੀ ਜਦੋਂ ਸਬੰਧਤ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਅਧਿਕਾਰੀ ਛੁੱਟੀ ਉੱਤੇ ਸੀ। ਬੁੱਧਵਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਜਾਰੀ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ ਨਿਊਜ਼ ਰਿਲੀਜ਼ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਨੇ ਆਖਿਆ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਇੰਟਰਨਲ ਅਫੇਅਰਸ ਬਿਊਰੋ ਵੱਲੋਂ 26 ਅਕਤੂਬਰ ਨੂੰ ਕਾਂਸਟੇਬਲ ਭਵਨ ਸੰਧੂ ਨੂੰ ਗ੍ਰਿਫਤਾਰ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਉਸ ਉੱਤੇ ਹਮਲਾ ਕਰਨ, ਸਰੀਰਕ ਨੁਕਸਾਨ ਪਹੁੰਚਾਉਣ ਤੇ ਧਮਕੀਆਂ ਦੇਣ ਦਾ ਮਾਮਲਾ ਦਰਜ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ। ਪਿਛਲੇ 5 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਮਹਿਕਮੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਸੰਧੂ ਨੂੰ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਚਾਰजेस ਐਕਟ ਤਹਿਤ ਸਸਪੈਂਡ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ। ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਅਗਲੇ ਸਾਲ 10 ਜਨਵਰੀ ਨੂੰ ਅਦਾਲਤ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੇਸ਼ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਵੇਗਾ।
Constable Sandhu is facing charges of assault, assault caused bodily harm, and uttering threats. All of these charges stem from an incident that occurred in the city of Brampton while off duty. He will be attending court in January of next year in answer to the charges, and once the court proceedings are complete, a Police Services Act investigation will commence.